So I got rejected from the college that I wanted to get into today, and it sucked. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm not good enough. What if I'm not going to have a future? This is horrible. How am I going to deal with this? I was upset, to say the least. And then I thought to myself, okay, how am I dealing with this right now? Why am I dealing with this failure in this way? And is this moving me forward in any way? Because, the decision has been made, it's done. I can't change anything about it now. And still, I choose to dwell on it and I choose to put myself down. And so I asked myself, why is it that some people fail so many times in their life and they just bounce back immediately? Those winner types. Like nothing can shake their confidence. Some friends of mine are like that. They apply, fail, they apply, fail, they start a job, they fail, and they fall down, they get right back up again. And then there are also people who fail and then they dwell on their mistakes and their failures for years to come. And they just can't get rid of it. And they become scared of even trying anything anymore. The difference between those people is not something that is fixed. It's not their personality and it's not their IQ. It's not their skills, nothing like that. It is simply how they interpret failure. So basically, what differentiates those people is their mindset when it comes to failure. And this has been well researched before. I'm sure you've heard about it before. It's called the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And this concept has been introduced by the psychologist Carol Dweck. And she basically defined those two as like two ways to deal with failure and to deal with effort, essentially. And just to give you a quick rundown of what those two mindsets are exactly, the fixed mindset refers to the fact or the belief that intelligence, skills, talent, those are all aspects of humans that are fixed, that you're born with, that aren't to be changed, okay? This is the fixed mindset. And then the growth mindset is when people believe that these things can be changed through dedication, through discipline, and resilience and learning, that you can actually change the skill set that you've been given, that you can, change the deck of cards that you've been dealt. And basically, depending on which mindset you have, this can have incremental consequences on your life. This can have major consequences on your life. So there was a study conducted by Blackwell et al., and also Dweck was also part of the study. And they instructed students to either have this fixed or growth mindset. And what they found was that the students who were instructed to have the growth mindset, they improved academically over the school year, whereas the people who had the fixed mindset, they either stayed the same or they even became worse than they were before. So the difference between those two groups was one group saw effort as a path forward and as evidence that something was changing, and the other group saw the effort and the studying as evidence of the fact that they weren't smart enough. And this was what caused the differences in the academic results. However, there's more at play than just mindset. So another psychologist, Bernard Weiner, he developed the so-called attribution theory, which explains how people interpret the cause of their failures. So this is similar, but also different. So here it's more about the cause, and with the fixed and growth mindset, it's more about how you think of yourself and your own skills and abilities. So Bernard Weiner found that we tend to explain failure along three dimensions. First of all, we either interpret failure as internal or as external. So we either say it's my fault or it's someone else's fault. Second dimension, we can either interpret it as stable or as unstable. Stable would be, this always happens. This always happens to me. The unstable one would be, oh, this happened this time, okay? But this can change, right? And the third dimension is you can either interpret it global or specific. So global would be something like, this affects my whole entire life. My whole entire life is screwed now that I can't get into this uni. And the specific one would be, okay, this is one area of my life. This didn't go well. Well, I'm still a good person. I still have great friendships. I still am happy with myself, and I will fix this area as well. And now here's the trap. People who explain their failures as internal, so it's my fault, as stable, it will always be this way, and as global, meaning this affects every single part of my life, they tend to experience depression, helplessness, and paralysis, which creates a vicious cycle because then they can't get up and try again and not fail. People start to believe they have no control over their outcomes. And because they believe that, they really don't have any control over their outcomes anymore. So this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And here's what makes this even more profound, in my opinion. Your mindset and attribution style doesn't just live in your thoughts, okay? They live in your brain. Neuroscientists have found that the brain reacts differently to failure based on your mindset. So there are some techniques where you can make the brain activity visible. One of them is fMRI. And in one fMRI study, Moser et al. Found that individuals with a growth mindset showed greater neural activity after making mistakes, particularly in the anterior cingulate cortex. This is very nerdy, I know, but this is involved in monitoring errors and adjusting behavior. And with the individuals with the growth mindset, the activity was increased there. So, translation into normal language, people with growth mindsets, they don't just think differently. They literally process mistakes more adaptively at the neural level. So the structure that is basically responsible for dealing with failure and dealing with setbacks and adjusting, this structure is more active in those people. And this ties into science of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize itself through experience and learning. So essentially, every time you persist through failure, your brain forms new connections and you become stronger, more capable, and more self-directed. So now you could ask, why don't people come back after they fail? Because it's easier that way. The easiest narrative to adopt is the one that requires the least action. So you stay with this internal, stable, and global attribution style. You say to yourself, I'm just not good at this. I've always failed at this. I'm just broken. It's cognitively easier to believe that the problem is you, permanently, globally, and unchangeably, than to confront the truth, which is that you might have failed because you didn't prepare enough, or you avoided responsibility, or that you didn't listen, adapt, push yourself enough. And this is the hardest pill to swallow because it demands transformation. It demands change in you. The first step is to realize what you've been doing all along. And then you have to make the effort of consciously reframing how you interpret negative events. This is not easy, but if you keep this in mind and sort of develop this metacognitive ability to monitor your own thoughts when it comes to failure, you can reframe it. So instead of saying, I failed because I'm not smart, or I failed because I'm not good enough, say, I failed because this uni has very difficult standards, or because all the other people who applied, they were very, very good as well, and I just wasn't as good as them. That doesn't mean that I'm not good. Or I failed because my strategy wasn't good. I didn't fail because I'm dumb. I didn't get this bad grade because I'm dumb, but because I didn't prepare properly. So I'm going to make a plan next time. And this is not delusion. Not at all. This is maybe what your toxic mind is trying to tell you right now, that, oh my God, this is delusional, and it's kind of, not taking responsibility, when that is so wrong. This is actually a way more accurate representation of the world than always blaming everything on yourself and your lack of intelligence, your lack of skills, and your lack of worth, essentially. So it's mental clarity more than delusion, and it really separates people who stagnate from those who grow. And also, for the last part, I want you to think of stories that you've heard as a kid. In every hero myth, from ancient Greece to modern cinema, there's one pattern that keeps showing up, and it's fall, despair, rebirth. Every time. Why? Because that's not just a story arc, it's a psychological necessity. This is what has fascinated humans for centuries, because this is the human story. We don't just succeed effortlessly. We try, we fail, and then we get back up again. Think about Steve Jobs. He was fired from the company that he built himself. He later said, "The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again." So it was after failure that he built Pixar. After failure that he returned to lead Apple into its golden age, when Apple actually became as successful as it is today. So the failure didn't define him, it refined him. And this is what you should be aiming for. So when you fail, and you will, remember, your explanation matters more than the event itself. Your brain is built to learn if you let it. The story you tell yourself is either a cage or a ladder. And you are not your past, but you're responsible for your future every single time. And the first step is what you choose to believe about your failure today. Because failure is not the end. It's the beginning of the person that you're still becoming. So I hope you guys could take something from this video. Maybe look at failure a little bit differently. It helped me for sure to think about my failure today a little differently and to move more positively into the future. I see you guys in the next video.